Welcome to Soul Endeavors. I'm Lisa, and I'm your host here at soulendeavors.com. Today, we are going to be talking about the values of the American flag. This is our fourth episode about the flag. And today, we're going to talk about the color blue and the values associated with the color blue: vigilance, perseverance, and justice. Each of those topics deserves its own full episode, so today's emphasis will be on the topic of vigilance. You may recall that the meaning and values underlying the American flag were first articulated in a report to Congress in 1782. And at that time, we've previously talked about the color red and the values of valor and bravery. And then last week we covered the color white and the associated values of purity and innocence. And in relation to each of those values, we spoke about their meaning in a general sense, their meaning within each of the major world religions, and their applicability in American culture. The purpose being to hopefully unify people around the values, the founding values of our country, to restore the soul of the nation. So, without further ado, vigilance is defined as the action or the state of being careful, on careful watch for possible danger or difficulty. It's synonymous with being careful, paying attention, being watchful, being concerned, being alert, aware, mindful, and heedful. In relation to vigilance, our founding fathers identified and spoke about the need for citizens to remain informed and remain vigilant in order to safeguard their constitutional rights and their liberties. And at the time of the founding of the country, what they were really talking about was citizens being mindful and vigilant in regards to management of the government itself, because they viewed the government as posing the greatest threat to the constitutional rights and individual liberties that they had worked hard to secure. I think we need to remember that democracy, time of the founding of this country, was and remains nothing more than an experiment. It is up to the people, to the citizens of the country, to demonstrate a collective will and to remain active participants in the management of our country. So, if the founding fathers perceived that it was the citizens' duty to remain vigilant, what were they referencing? So I did a little bit of research to see exactly what, vigilance was intended to mean back in, the 1700s, early 1800s. George Washington, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison all identified one particular threat, and that threat was political parties. It's kind of interesting to contemplate that the founders of our country were leery of political parties and felt that American citizens would need to remain vigilant to ensure that political parties did not interfere with the constitutional rights and liberties that the citizens of America, were to have. In addition, Benjamin Franklin was particularly vocal in warning about the need to be vigilant in relation to despotism. Felt it was critical for the nation and the citizens in the nation to maintain a foundation of moral integrity and to be vigilant in regard to societal decay. From Benjamin Franklin's perspective, when people fear for their lives or fear for their property, it invites the government to adopt a strong and autocratic approach. It's easy to see how people would view the current administration as acting in a very, very autocratic way. And it's also to see and easy to understand why we have people who do fear for their lives and do fear for their property and are looking to the government to protect them. It's a reflection of our failure to maintain vigilance over the past couple of decades on 1,000 levels. Um, to be vigilant, for the citizenry to be vigilant, is to ensure the protection of liberty and justice for all. Ben Franklin was also the one who notoriously said, you've been given a republic if you can keep it. For Thomas Jefferson believed that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. So, but for the eternal vigilance of our citizenry, our liberty is at risk. It's so hard to look at what's going on in our society this week with the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk and all of the reactivity that has gone with that. But the truth of the matter is, this has been building. This level of violence has been ongoing now for multiple years. And the political parties and the political news media are driving the division in our country. It's easy enough to pick a side, and we all have a side. Those of us who vote have all picked a side. It's much harder to come out and reach out at this point to try to unite people and try to restore unity to this country. We have to do it. We need to be vigilant. We need to get on top of it because this cannot continue. Too many people are being hurt. It's not good for the country. It's not sustainable in the long term. It does not allow anybody to feel safe. And the type of vigilance that's being demonstrated is very partisan and fails to protect liberty and fails to protect the constitutional rights of all in favor of extremism on one side or the other. Um, we're going to move on now to talk about the major religions. And as you are aware, I really view the Christian right as a divisive force in our country. And, I do consider myself to be a Christian, but in being a Christian, we have to accept and acknowledge that God loves all people. And many people don't even believe in God. There are world religions where, when you look into their fundamental beliefs and into their value systems, you recognize that um, well, there are many, many commonalities, including the common core values that underlie the founding of our country. So, for the values that we've talked about in the past couple of episodes. We've delved into their meaning in the various religions, and we're going to do the same here. Vigilance is a word that appears many, many times in the Bible. We are instructed to be sober-minded, to be watchful, to be on guard, to keep awake, to stay dressed for action, to keep our lamps burning, to let us not sleep, to let us not grow weary, to pay careful attention, and to stay awake. Mm. Within Judaism, vigilance refers to being careful, specifically in relation to one's own actions and habits. The opposite of vigilance is inattentiveness or carelessness. However, within Judaism, there is a differentiation between contemplative vigilance, to be aware, to be on guard, to be alert in a healthy manner, as compared to the type of vigilance that flows from a state of anxiety and fear. Judaism really emphasizes that anxiety and fear are not healthy, and that the way to avoid anxiety and fear is to be serene and to accept the status of life as it is, which you'll see is a concept that also manifests in other great world religions. Within Judaism, the goal is to be vigilant, but not fearful. Within Buddhism, vigilance is a very important concept. To be vigilant is to focus on being watchful and attentive, aware and alert, primarily in relation to one's own mind, one's own body, and one's own speech. To be vigilant allows an individual to respond with wisdom and compassion to every circumstance and during every encounter. By being vigilant within the Buddhist tradition, the wise person pays attention as opposed to neglecting, neglecting to be vigilant, which leaves a person vulnerable. In order to be on the path to enlightenment within the Buddhist faith, a person needs to be vigilant and continually checking on the status of their own body, their own speech, and their own mind. Within Hinduism, vigilance is discussed often and has an important role in the faith. Vigilance within the Hindu tradition encompasses two arenas, if you will, of vigilance. So we have spiritual vigilance. We also have civic vigilance. Um, Starting with the civic vigilance, um, the Hindu faith, the Ganges River is very important in the Hindu faith. And so vigilance referred to what is necessary in guarding the Ganges. Vigilance is crucial to preventing surprise attacks, and guarding the Ganges River requires being watchful, being on guard for potential threats. It is viewed as the opposite of apathy. In relation to spiritual growth, vigilance is necessary to protect Dharma. Dharma is the moral and ethical component governing individual conduct. So to be vigilant is to value and protect yourself from moral and ethical wrongdoing. To be passively acquiescent is considered an act of violence within the Hindu faith. So if you're careless, if you're not vigilant, and you fail to protect your own self, okay, then you have committed an act of violence. Within Islam, vigilance is a fundamental aspect of spiritual life. It involves a constant awareness and an alertness to both surroundings and to individual actions. Every action, every thought, and every decision made within the Islamic faith is expected to align with the teachings of Allah. Vigilance is necessary to ensure that the individual actions and intentions align with those teachings. It is viewed as being incumbent upon every individual as well as upon society itself to learn how to be constantly alert and to learn how to maintain vigilance until the last breath. It's definitely viewed as something that requires learning and training to achieve that level of vigilance that would allow a person to be living fully in accordance with Allah. We have here in America, obviously, other religions, including a, minority, but not small minority of people who consider themselves to be atheists. I did do some research into atheists and whether I could find any common themes of vigilance among the atheists. Um, Written works, statements, philosophies. I wasn't able to identify anything. But what I did find was that there's a lot of people who use the word vigilante. And vigilante, obviously, very close in form to the word vigilance, also close in form to the word vigil. To be vigilant um, is an adjective. It speaks to a way of being, a way of behaving. Vigilante, on the other hand, is a noun. To be a vigilante is to be a person operating outside the scope of the law, kind of taking matters into one's own hands. It's easy to see how vigilance taken to an extreme could lead to vigilantism. And perhaps that is what we're seeing right now in our society, where individuals are so aware, so distraught about views and opinions that don't agree with their own, that they are willing to take matters into their own hands to put it to bed. The problem with that is that is more of a fear-based reaction that is divorced from the best that human beings can bring to the table as far as being vigilant. Um, I found a quote that I thought was interesting, which is this: a vigilant person sees the law as an asset to be utilized, while a vigilante sees the law as a hurdle to be overcome. So that's an interesting, um, you know, comparison. Um, Today, I'm still feeling overwhelmed by the political violence in the country, by the assassination of a prominent political figure earlier this week, as well as by just watching the vitriol that is flowing on social media. Everybody wanting to draw comparisons to different types of evil. Um, if we want to be upset about the assassination of um, this conservative-minded man, why were we so outraged about the death of people in their home just a month or so ago, where people were executed in their own home for their political beliefs? Or why are we not so outraged about the children who died in the school shooting on the same day as the political assassination? It's very interesting to watch people want to draw all of those things into some type of comparison, some type of basis to suggest that people who are conservative don't really care about the other people. The people who are conservative only care about the death of the conservative political figure. I think that's a misconception. I think that the back and forth really reflects more the collective failure of our citizens to remain vigilant, and particularly to remain vigilant to the type of division that exists right now. So my hope is that, we can come together despite all odds. We can overcome this highly politically divisive atmosphere that we are living under right now and restore our country to a place where the citizens are in charge of the government and holding our leadership accountable, not just to one political viewpoint or the other, but to the good of the country as a whole. America is home to everybody, to people with varying beliefs. We're never going to eliminate hate. We're never going to eliminate prejudice. We're never going to eliminate racism. We're never going to eliminate violence. We certainly aren't going to eliminate gun violence anytime soon. But if we want to address those things, coming together as the citizens of this country, holding our government accountable, and unifying behind our common ideals is a path forward that I'm hoping can gain some traction. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your watching. I look forward to seeing you next week. Next week, we are going to talk about perseverance. Uh, and then we will have our last session dedicated to the concept of justice in America. Hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks for listening.